My name is Twilight Lewis. I'm 38 years old and 2 months ago, a doctor gave me 2 months to live. So, I flew home to say goodbye to my family, and I found my mom on a ventilator, in the ICU, while my sister posted champagne photos from her in-law's anniversary party. The police called what happened to my mother a burglary. The insurance company paid it like one. But here's what none of them knew. Dying women read crime scenes differently. I spent 12 years as a combat engineer. I know what stage looks like. And what I found zipped inside my mother's couch cushion turned my last 2 months into something nobody in that family saw coming. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories, where family secrets come to light, and quiet strength wins in the end. If stories about standing up for the people you love speak to you, drop a comment below, and be sure to subscribe. It started in an exam room in Tacoma, Washington, with me watching a doctor search for a gentle way to say pancreatic. There isn't one. Stage 4. He said the median was 2 months, that it could be 8 weeks, could be 5 if I responded to treatment. I asked for the numbers. He blinked at me, then gave them. Because I'm the kind of woman people eventually just give the numbers to. 12 years in the army will do that. I built bridges under fire and took apart things that beeped. And my whole adult life has run on one principle. If you plan well enough, you don't need anyone. So, I did what I do. I opened a notebook and started a checklist for shutting down a life, sell the truck, assign my pension, cancel the dentist, which felt almost funny. The one line I couldn't write was the phone call home. My mom, Ruth, is 71, a retired school librarian, who buried my dad 3 years ago, and learned to sleep alone in a house he built around her. She had already counted down one death at that kitchen table. I wasn't going to hand her a second countdown with my name on it. I decided she'd get a visit instead, a good long one, and she'd find out the truth only when the truth got loud. That was the plan. Then I noticed the thing that had been sitting wrong in my chest for days. My mother and I talk every Sunday at 4 o'clock. Her time? We have for 16 years through 3 deployments and 2 time zones. It had been 3 Sundays in a row and all I'd gotten was her voicemail. Understand something about me. I left Dayton at 22, and I managed my family the way I managed supply lines from a distance with redundancy. Sunday calls a neighbor, Mrs. Okafor, who's lived across the street from my mother for 30 years, and would notice a curtain hanging wrong. I kept the number of Mom's doctor in my phone. I mailed her a medical alert pendant 2 Christmases ago, and made her promise to wear it, and she does because she knows I check. That was my version of love. Logistics. My sister Dana, 34, stayed local and married up. A man named Grant Ashworth, whose family owns a smart home security startup called Havenlock. The kind of people who have a lake house and a family office and a Christmas card that looks like a campaign ad. When Mom stopped answering, I texted Dana. She wrote back fast and bright. Mom's fine. Church retreat, phone's off. You know how she gets prayer hands emoji. I read it 4 times. My mother has never once turned her phone off, because my mother is afraid of missing a call from me. Short version, I didn't buy it. I called Mrs. Okafor to ask her to walk across the street, and a voice I'd never heard answered and told me I had the wrong number. I checked the contact, same number I'd used for years. I sat with my phone in my lap and my oncologist's paperwork on the counter, and I felt the specific cold I used to feel on route clearance. When the road ahead looks fine, and every instinct you own says it isn't, I moved my flight up to the next morning. Whatever was waiting in Dayton, I was going to walk into it early. The house told me first. 3 weeks of mail jammed the box. The grass stood shin high. And my mother has never in her life let grass go 3 weeks. On the back door, a torn sticker with an insurance company logo. The kind adjusters leave when they've come and gone. I was still standing in the driveway when Mrs. Okafor came across the street with her cardigan wrapped tight, and her face did the thing faces do when they realize you don't know. They took her 3 weeks ago, sweetheart. She said. The ambulance. I thought you knew. Dana told me you were too busy to come. I don't remember the drive to St. Aldrich. 15 minutes that exist in my head as one long red light. What I remember is the ICU. My mother, 71 years of stubborn Ohio librarian, with a tube in her throat and half her head shaved where they drilled to relieve the bleed. Her right wrist was casted. Her arms were purple and yellow at once. Bruises layered like bad paint. Machines breathed for her in a rhythm no daughter should have to learn. I stood there doing the thing I hate most, which is nothing. A nurse came in on quiet shoes, checked a line, and looked at me longer than nurses look at strangers. Her badge said, Maras Vega. You're the other daughter. She said, the army one. Ruth talks about you when she can talk. Then she glanced at the door, and lowered her voice like the room had ears. Your sister hasn't been in since Tuesday, she said. And in 3 weeks, you're the first person who's asked me what these injuries actually mean. The official story lived in a folder at the nurse's station, home invasion, 3 weeks back. My mother supposedly surprised a burglar after midnight, got shoved, hit her head on the brick hearth, and lay there until Dana found her the next morning when she stopped by with breakfast. The police report listed a rear window as the entry point. A stolen television, stolen cameras, missing jewelry. The neurologist walked me through the injuries in that careful voice they teach them. Traumatic brain injury from the fall, a fractured right wrist, the kind you get when you throw your hand out to catch yourself. Then he paused on the part he clearly didn't like. Some of this bruising is older, he said. Days older, different stages of healing. I asked what that usually means. He said in a tone flat enough to be a second opinion all by itself that it usually means the fall wasn't the first thing that happened to her. I went back to the folder. I read the police report twice, then a third time. The way you read a diagram that doesn't load right. My mother fought for her life on that floor for 7 hours, and the responding officer had written it up in 9 lines. No photos of the Pride window, no canvas of the neighbors, case status, inactive, pending leads. I filled out after-action reports with more curiosity than that. I stood in the hallway with the folder in my hands and did the math I didn't want to do. Old bruises. A woman afraid of nothing except missing my calls. A break-in with no pictures. My phone buzzed. Dana had finally texted back. Heard you're in town. We should talk. Wine? Wine. Our mother was on a ventilator, and my sister was offering me a Chardonnay. I didn't wait for wine. Dana's public life is a search away. And that night, the Ashworth were hosting their 40th anniversary celebration at the family estate. 40 minutes of catering trucks and valet flags. I found my sister on the back lawn in a silver dress, laughing with her mother-in-law under string lights 3 weeks into our mother's coma. She saw me and her face did a quick professional reset, delight snapping over panic like a lens cap. Gee, you should have called. I said. Mom looked thinner, that the doctors had questions, that I had more. Dana's husband, Grant, materialized the way he always does, smooth as poured concrete, hand on my shoulder like we'd ever once been friends. This family has been through so much, he said. Insurance is handling the house. The medical bills are handled. Everything's handled. I asked very evenly, who was handling Mom? And my little sister looked at me with our mother's eyes set in a stranger's face and said, we are just managing her affairs. Managing her affairs like Mom was a property with deferred maintenance. I asked what that meant exactly, and Grant slid a business card into my hand, their attorney, a man named Feld. All questions through him, please. Then Dana, 2 glasses of champagne past careful, added the sentence she wasn't supposed to say. It's all legal, Chi. Mom signed the power of attorney months ago. She wanted this. I stood on that perfect lawn with a string quartet tuning behind me. And snorts, I thought about my Sunday calls. Months of them. My mother telling me about her tomatoes, her book club, her hip. Never once in any of those months did she mention signing her life over to Dana. You learn something in demolition. The quieter the structure, the more you check the load paths. I smiled and left before they could see me start checking. I moved into my mother's house that night, dropped my duff in my old room, and started doing the only thing that has ever calmed me down, which is looking at something carefully. The living room still wore the costume of a burglary. Drawers hung open, cushions flipped, a bookshelf swept bare, but costumes have seams. The dresser drawers had been pulled out and dumped, yet the dust lines on top of the dresser sat undisturbed. No handprints, no drag marks. Nobody had actually searched anything. The television was gone, and whoever took it had unscrewed the wall bracket, 4 screws neatly, and set them in a cup on the mantel. Burglars do not do finished carpentry. Then the window. The report said the intruder broke the rear kitchen window to get in. I went outside with a flashlight and crouched in the flower bed my father edged with brick the summer before he died. The glass was in the mulch. Outside, you break a window coming in. The glass falls in. You break a window from the inside. Standing in your own kitchen trying to make a story. The glass falls exactly where I was kneeling. I photographed it with a ruler for scale. Logged the time and sat back on my heels in the dark, breathing slow. Somebody had built this scene and they'd built it lazy because they never expected an inspector. They expected grief. Grief doesn't measure glass. I was still crouched there when I noticed the small white eye above the porch light. A Havenlock camera, Grant's brand, mounted 2 years ago, as a gift for Mom's safety. Its status ring blinked a soft, steady blue, armed, recording, watching me right then and sending everything it saw to somebody who was not me. Here's what you should know about those cameras. Grant installed them 2 Christmases ago, made a show of it, drilled and leveled and talked about protecting family. The account sat in my mother's name because the subscription billed to her card. But the administrator, the one login that could see everything and delete anything, belonged to Grant. I knew the platform. Home security is half my civilian job. Hardening systems for utilities. And Havenlock's cloud is built like most of them. Footage synced to servers. Activity logged. I signed into Mom's account because I'm the one who set up her recovery email in the first place back when I was managing my family like a supply line. The camera history was right there, tidy as a bank statement. Every quiet evening, every porch delivery, weeks and weeks of a widow's small life, except the night that mattered. The night of the burglary, the record simply stopped at 11:58, and didn't pick up again until 6:41 the next morning. Nearly 7 hours of nothing. Clean as a splice. Cameras fail sometimes. Storms happen. But down in the account's activity log in grey letters nobody expects a grieving family to read, the system had kept its own diary. Manual deletion. 4 cameras executed by the administrator account at 1:12 a.m. While my mother was bleeding on the floor beneath one of them. Whoever wiped that footage was thorough about the video and careless about the ledger, because deletion logs don't delete themselves. I sat at my mother's kitchen table in the house dressed up as a crime scene, and I felt something in me go very calm and very cold at the same time. Deletion isn't destruction. It's just a promise. And most people have no idea how hard that promise is to keep. The next evening, my mother woke up. Not all the way. Not for long. The ventilator had come out that morning, and her voice was a paper version of itself. I was reading in the chair beside her bed when her casted hand moved, and her eyes found me. And for 1 second, every machine in that room went quiet in my head. "You came home," she whispered. I said, "Of course I did." I said, "I'm here, Mama. I've got you. All the things you say." Her fingers curled around mine with surprising strength, the grip of a woman who once hauled a box of encyclopedias up a ladder because no student of hers was going without. And then her eyes changed. They went past me to the door, actually checked the door, and she pulled me down close, and what she said was not what I expected. "Don't tell Dana," she breathed. "Please don't tell Dana," I asked. "Don't tell Dana what, Mama?" But she was already sliding under again, her monitor resuming its steady account of her heart, her secret going down with her. I stood over her bed for a long time. My mother had woken from 3 weeks in the dark with 1 sentence's worth of strength in her whole body, and she had spent it on fear. And the person she was afraid of was not a burglar. A burglar, you'd say, lock the doors. A stranger, you'd say they had a gun. My mother said a name, and the name was her own daughter's. I walked out past the nurse's station, past Marisol, who read my face and let me go, and I stood in the parking garage doing arithmetic. The doctors had given me 8 weeks, maybe a little more. These people had no idea what a combat engineer can build in 8 weeks. My father's workshop still smelled like him. Machine oil and sawdust and patience. He ran Snorts, the machine shop, his whole life. Sold it 3 years ago, for a little over $700,000, and died of a heart attack 4 months into retirement, which is the kind of joke God tells in Ohio. His pegboard still had the outline of every tool drawn in marker. I cleared his workbench and built what I know how to build, a timeline, photos of the glass, the dresser, the bracket screws printed at the drugstore and pinned in order. The deletion log. 1:12 a.m. The police reports 9 in different lines. Red string because red string works. I stood back and looked at it the way I used to look at a bridge before I certified it. Load by load. Rule 1 from 12 years of route clearance. 1 operator, fewer leaks. Nobody knew what I had, so nobody could get ahead of it. That included my diagnosis, which was nobody's business, and it included the clinical trial coordinator in Seattle, who had left me 2 voicemails about an intake appointment I kept not scheduling. A trial slot was the one card medicine had left to deal me maybe a few extra months. I let it ride. I told myself I'd call Thursday. There was too much to do here, and I work alone. And that has always been the whole architecture of me. I was labeling the folder on the wire transfers I hadn't found yet when my phone lit up with a number I didn't know. A woman's voice warm as a banker's lobby. "Miss Lewis, I'm calling from the Ashworth family office. Richard would love to have you over for coffee." "Just family," she said. "Just family." I looked at my wall of string and said I'd be delighted. If you've ever gotten one phone call that split your life into before and after, then you know why I couldn't sleep that night. Stay with me, because what I found in my mother's bank statements is the part nobody in my family wanted anyone to see. If you believe mothers deserve better than this, tap subscribe so I know you're walking the rest of this road with me. Coffee at the Ashworth estate is a performance with a beverage attached. Richard Ashworth, 64, silverware counts, received me in a study with leather chairs older than my career, and asked about my health, with his head tilted just so. I gave him nothing. He praised my mother, praised my service, and then gently, the way a man adjusts a thermostat, suggested I must be exhausted, that Tacoma must miss me, that family was for leaning on, and the family had this handled. "Grant will run you to the airport himself," he said, "whenever you're ready." I smiled and said I hadn't picked a date. On the drive back to my mother's house, I replayed every sentence, because men like Richard don't make small talk, they make surveys. He'd been mapping what I knew. Fine. At the kitchen table, I opened Mom's Havenlock account again to pull the deletion log into my files, and the app did something the Ashworths would have hated. It showed me the device list. 4 cameras at my mother's address. One of them offline since the burglary listed on the police report as stolen. Except the device wasn't gone from the account. It was online live, that very minute. Streaming a wide clean view of a boathouse, a dock, a lake going silver in the afternoon light. I knew that dock from Dana's Instagram. The Ashworth Lake House. The camera my family reported stolen. The one an insurance company had paid my mother for was screwed to a wall 40 miles away, faithfully recording the people who took it. They hadn't even bothered to wipe it and start over. Why would they? Nobody checks a dead woman's app. I poured myself my father's bourbon and toasted the little blinking light. Sloppy, I told it. Stay sloppy. My father kept paper. Thank God the man kept paper. A fireproof cabinet in the workshop held 30 years of the Lewis family in manila folders, and in the drawer marked Ruth. I found the bank statements because Mom never switched to paperless. She likes envelopes. I spread 5 months of them across the workbench, and the story told itself in 3 lines of ink. 3 wire transfers. 90,000 in September, 110 in November, 100,000 in December. $300,000 moved out of my mother's savings. The machine shop money my father bled for. Each transfer authorized under the power of attorney and each one sent to the same place. Something called Albridge Holdings LLC. I'd never heard of it. The internet barely had either. No website, no address, a registered agent behind a filing service. But the internet had plenty to say about Havenlock. Tech Press 8 months back gushing about expansion. Tech Press 2 months back quieter mentioning burn rate, and a make-or-break Series C round closing at their big product launch. A funding round closing at the launch. A mother-in-law's savings draining in the exact same season. I sat there listening to the shop clock my father never fixed running 2 ticks slow. And I added the last number in. The insurance claim for the burglary, which I'd found on the adjuster's sticker paperwork, $38,000, paid out for a television and jewelry and cameras, one of which was presently enjoying lake views on my phone. Fraud stacked on my mother's skull. Underneath the last statement, at the bottom of the drawer, I found an envelope. Mom's handwriting shaky addressed to my Twilight. And under the name If Something Ever. That's where it stopped. If something ever. She never got to finish the sentence, and I put it in my breast pocket, and kept it there unfinished like a fuse. I ran into Dana at the hospital that Thursday, 11 at night, and for once, nobody had staged anything. She was alone on a hallway bench outside the ICU, heels off, feet bare on the tile, mascara gone to smoke under her eyes. She looked 14 again. She looked like the kid who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. I sat down and we watched the vending machine hum for a while, and then she said, "You think I don't love her?" It wasn't a question, so I didn't answer it. "You left," she said. "You got to leave. You got the army and the medals and the clean exit, and I stayed. And staying has a price, Twilight. You have no idea what it costs to keep a seat at that table." Her voice didn't rise. That's what scared me. It was the flat voice of somebody doing math they've done 1,000 times. I could have said, "Our mother is behind that door with a hole drilled in her head. Tell me about cost." I didn't. I asked one question instead. Quiet. No blade showing. "Where were you that night, Dana?" And my sister, who used to sing to herself when she was scared, who sang through Dad's whole funeral under her breath, looked at the vending machine and said, "Cincinnati." We were in Cincinnati. There's a hotel receipt. Here's the thing about people who answer a question you didn't ask. She'd skipped straight to the receipt. I said, okay. I said, get some sleep. I rode the elevator down doing the coldest thing I know how to do, which is believing what I see instead of what I love. My baby sister had an alibi ready, rehearsed, and some part of her, some buried 14-year-old part, was singing scared underneath it. I told everyone I was getting the house ready for Mom to come home. It was even half true. Saturday morning, I started on the living room, put the books back, righted the drawers, unzipped the sofa cushions to wash the covers, because my mother would rise from her own grave to wash those covers if I didn't. My hand hit something hard inside the middle cushion. Sewn in springs, I thought. Then I pulled the zipper the rest of the way, and there it was, buried in the foam like a body. Her medical alert pendant. The one I mailed her 2 Christmases ago, the one she promised to wear and did wear every day because she knew I checked. Somebody had zipped it inside a couch cushion, and when I turned it over, the back plate was open and the battery was gone. Not dead, gone, removed. I sat down on the bare floor of my mother's living room and held that little grey button in my palm and understood the whole night in one piece. She reached for it. At some point that night, or before it, my mother reached for the one lifeline her paranoid soldier daughter had given her, and it was already silent because someone in her own family had opened it up beforehand and taken out its voice. The burglary was improvised. The pendant was planned. Whoever did this had walked through my mother's house before that night, thinking about what could call for help, and quietly strangled it in advance. I don't have good words for what happened in my chest on that floor. The fury I'd been carrying since the ICU went somewhere different. It stopped boiling. It set the way concrete sets. I put the pendant on a cord and wore it around my wrist from that morning on. Battery slot empty like a watch that tells only one time. My body picked that week to send its bill. I was walking the ICU corridor with a folder of discharge planning questions when the floor tilted like a ship, and the pain I'd been managing with willpower and prescription paper went from a 6 to a number I hadn't met yet. I made it to the wall, mostly. The next thing I knew, Meris Vega had me in a chair with her fingers on my pulse and her eyes on my face, and she wasn't looking at me like a visitor anymore. She was looking at me like inventory. I've seen that kind of thin before, she said quietly. And I've seen the way you fold your arm over your middle when you stand up. Does your family know? I said there was nothing to know. She let that sit between us, one professional to another, both of us fluent in the language of people who won't lie down. Then she didn't push, which is how I knew she was good. She wrote her personal cell number on a supply slip and tucked it into my folder. For when the nothing gets heavy, she said, and walked back to her shift. In the parking garage, my phone showed a voicemail from Seattle, the trial coordinator, patient as a metronome. Miss Lewis, we need your intake scheduled by Friday, or we have to release your slot to the next candidate. The slot closes Friday. Call me back, Twilight, please. She'd stopped saying Ms. Lewis by the end of it. I sat in my mother's car with my hands on the wheel, the pendant on my wrist, the folder on the seat. One door marked more time and one door marked her, and I did not have the tools to hold both open. Friday was 5 days away. Monday, I bought an hour with an elder law attorney, a tired, sharp woman named Prue Callahan, who has seen every version of this movie. I laid it out. She listened with her pen down, which lawyers only do when it's bad. The power of attorney looks valid on its face. She said notarized, witnessed, months old. You can challenge it. Undue influence capacity, and you might even win in 8 months. Maybe 12. I said my mother might not have 8 months. I didn't say that. I definitely didn't. Then she slid a printout across the desk and made it worse. Your sister filed a guardianship petition last week. If the court appoints Dana as your mother's legal guardian, every decision, medical, financial, residential, runs through her permanently, and your challenge dies on the Vine hearings in 3 weeks. I asked what stops them from emptying the accounts in the meantime, and she gave me the honest answer, which is paperwork and hope. Courts are careful, Miss Lewis, she said, and careful means slow. Meanwhile, Haven Lock's funding round was closing in 2 weeks at that launch event. Tech press counting down like it was a rocket. Snorts, money moves at wire speed. Justice moves at docket speed. Anyone who tells you the system protects the vulnerable has never raced it against a bank transfer. I stood to go and Prue Callahan looked at my wrist at the little grey pendant on its cord for a beat longer than politeness. Then she said the sentence I'd flown 2,000 miles to hear somebody finally say out loud. Paper.